Imagine buying an airline for the price of 1 ringgit and turning it into one of Asia's most recognizable low-cost carriers. That is the leadership story I am analyzing today. My focus is Tan Sri Datuk Sri Anthony Francis Fernandes, the Malaysian business leaders behind the Asia's transformations. My main argument is this: Fernandes is not best understood as a flawless hero. He is better understood as a powerful transformational leader with servant-style behavior, but one who still depends on strong transitional discipline, especially in a safety-critical and crisis-prone industry like aviation. I will first introduce the leader, then diagnose his leadership style, map his behavior to theory, evaluate the impact on the employees and performance, and finally give a critical reflection with practical recommendations for others managers. I choose Tony Fernandes because he gives us a leadership case with both upside and downside, which is exactly what strong analysis requires. On the one hand, he is the leader most people associate with Asia's Gulf story, the 1 ringgit acquisitions in 2001, the low-cost missions, and the very visible all-stars culture. On the other hand, his leadership was later tested by pandemic disruptions, restructuring, and difficult employment decisions. That makes him more useful than a simple success story. He allows us to ask not only what kind of leadership works, but also under what conditions it stops being enough. For an organizational behaviors presentation, that is a much stronger case. So rather than celebrating him uncritically, I use his case to show how leadership style shape motivations, cultures, team performance, and the organizational capability to cope under pressures. The main theory I apply is full-range leadership. This matters because Tony Fernandes is often described too simply as either transformational or democratic. I think that is incomplete. At his core, he fit transformational leadership. He used powerful missions, visible symbolism, energy, and optimize to align people around a shared purpose. But he also showed several style behaviors, especially in the way he talks about listening, staying close to the ground, and removing barriers for employees. However, this is an airline. Aviation is a safety-critical industry. That means transformational energy cannot replace transactional disciplines. Clear procedures, strong KPIs, and compliance systems are not optional. So the most defensible interpretation is hybrid. Transformational at the level of visions and culture, but depend on transitional control for executions. I also want to add one cultural point. In a Malaysian context, where hierarchy is often more accepted, his casual accessibility may feel especially distinctive, but does not mean hierarchy disappears. In fact, it can make one leader even more symbolically central. Alright, this slide shows why transformational leadership is not just a label pasted on the top of the case. The behaviors do line up with 4 I's. First, idealized influence. Fernandes has long used symbolic, highly visible leadership. During the COVID shock, Reuters reported that the founders gave up their salaries while the staff accepted a major pay cut. Whether or not one agree with all later decision, that fits role modeling. Second, inspirational motivation. Now everyone can fly is a strong example of a mission that is memorable, emotional, and easy to translate into action. Third, intellectual stimulation. AirAsia did not just defend the airline business. It pushed digital transition and upskilling, including the academic-based pathway and redeployment into new roles. Fourth, individual's consideration. Fernandez explicitly described leadership as a being on the ground, available, making eye contact, and listening. So yes, the theory fits, but it also shows up how leader-centered the culture may be. Alright, so now I move from style to impact. The stronger positive effect is probably on motivation and culture. Fernandez offers the employees a mission that is easy to understand and emotionally powerful. That matters because meaning is a major driver of engagement. The All-Stars identity also helps employees feel part of something bigger than an ordinary airline job. Culturally, his style supports speed, informality, and cross-functional energy. That can be a competitive threat, but I want to be balanced here. A culture that feels flat is not automatically inclusive. Informal influence can still be uneven. On performance, I use one careful indicator rather than making exaggerated claims. Official airline operating statistics show total passengers rose from 74.8 million in 2018 to 83.5 million in 2019, or 12% years on year. By comparison, Asia Pacific carriers reported 4.2% growth in international passengers in 2019. The comparison is not perfectly like for like, so I treat it as directional evidence only. That makes the analysis more credible. Alright, so this is a slide that pushes the presentation from good to excellence because it moved beyond price. So my judgment is that Tony Fernandez is a strong transformational leader but not a self-sufficient one. His strengths are obvious. He creates clarity, energy, belonging, and speed. Those are real leadership advantages. But the weakness of this model also becomes clear under pressure. The more a culture depends on one leader's symbolism, the more fragile it can become when the organization faces a shock that symbolism alone cannot solve. Reuters reported in April 2020 that the founders gave up salary while the staff accepted major pay cuts that support idealized influence. But Reuters also reported later in September 2020 that AirAsia was looking to lay off hundreds of employees. By 2024, Fernandez's contract was renewed specifically to help Street's survival and restructuring. So, the critical lesson is this: charismatic transformational leadership can scale culture fast, but only systems sweeten trust when the environment turns whole life. That is why I reject a simplistic hero narrative. Alright, so I will end up with a lesson others managers can actually use. First, craft a mission that people can remember in a one sentence. Second, be visible in a way that lower fears and increase trust. And third, invite ideas, but make decisions right implicate. Fourth, during crisis, communicate scary thoughts, and trade off honestly. And fifth, build systems so the culture can survive beyond a single pragmatic leader. My final conclusion is this: Tony Fernandes is a strong Malaysian leadership case not because he is perfect, but because he shows both the powers and the limit of transformational leadership. He demonstrates how visions, symbolism, and accessibility can energize people and shape the culture. But his case also shows that the inspirations must be anchored in system, accountability, and operational discipline. This is why the best lesson from Tony Fernandes is not be characteristic. The real lesson is inspire boldly, but institutionalize what you build. That's all from me. Thank you so much.